everyone, it's David coming to you today from my Beatles corner here in my home in Central Ohio. We are going to talk about, on this episode of Collecting Beatles 101, the first United States Beatles album. And it may not be what you think it is. It's not this. So stick around and we'll learn about it and how you can spot a counterfeit edition as well. Back in January of 1964, the Beatles were huge. They were huge. They were so huge of an act, even without stepping foot in the United States. They wouldn't even be here for another month. So the EMI label here in the United States was Capitol Records. And Capitol was hesitant to even issue anything by the Beatles. But reluctantly, they issued on January 20th their first Capitol Beatles album. And it says, even right here under Meet the Beatles, says the first album by England's phenomenal pop combo. But that is not the case. Back in 1963, EMI had contracted with a small record label out of Chicago, Illinois called VJ Records. And they issued, 10 days before Capitol, they issued this album, Introducing the Beatles, which is essentially the Please Please Me album issued here in the United States. And for a little bit more information on this album, please see my video on Please Please Me around the world. But there's a whole bunch of legal wrangles. Legal wrangles? Is that the right thing to say? Legalities involving VJ. Now, VJ was not a fly-by-night label. They actually were noted record label that issued local Chicago artists. They issued music on, gospel singers and religious albums. And they did have at least one pop group in their stable of artists, which you might have heard of, named Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Big Girls Don't Cry and, all those great classic Jersey Boy songs, baby. But VJ faced legal problems. The president of the label was using company assets to pay off gambling debts. And, a band like the Beatles in 1963 wasn't high up on the list of artists that they felt that they could invest in and issue, even though they had the album basically all ready to go. So by November of 63, they let their license lapse. Now, let's flash ahead one more month to December 1963. Not, oh, what night, late December back in 63. They heard about the Beatles, and their popularity was starting to bubble here in the States. So what did VJ do? Even though they had no legal right to issue this album, they went ahead and issued it anyway, which, of course, EMI was pretty disappointed about. So long story short, there was a big, like I said, legal battle between EMI and VJ, and VJ, they would be allowed to issue copies of Introducing the Beatles. Then court would say stop, and another court would say go ahead and issue it. So they'd have these windows of opportunity to issue Introducing the Beatles and several other albums as well. But it was actually all Introducing the Beatles. And we're going to take a look at some of those other ones as well. But anyway, by the end of 1964, that's when VJ was told, stop pressing more copies. There were record stores that had copies in their bins. So it was still, still available. But after supply ran out, maybe a few years later, some counterfeiters, I don't know who they were, but they took a copy of Introducing the Beatles and they started counterfeiting it. And this is another reason why I wanted to do this video, is because there are counterfeits out there. And if you go on eBay, there are people, whether they realize it or not, are selling counterfeit copies of this album, Introducing the Beatles, which god-awful, hideous album cover, picture, and all. And they do a somewhat good job of it. But let's take a look at a legitimate copy of Introducing the Beatles and compare it against a counterfeit, which I have several here in my collection. So first off, with Introducing the Beatles, VJ was a legitimate professional record company. Even though, like, look at those. There's no liner notes. That's the back cover. But, here's a couple of earmarks. You see that brown border all the way around and how washed out this photo is? This is an obvious fake. There were no legitimate copies of Introducing the Beatles that had this brown border all around it. Okay? And, you're going to look at the back cover. Stereo copies with this running order, which include Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You, are ultra rare. There weren't a lot of copies made of this running order of songs produced in stereo. So you're going to see either a brown, the brown border, it says stereo down at the bottom. Can we get a shot of that, Johnny? No, Johnny's not here. See, down in that corner it says stereo, but it's still a mono copy of the album inside. And then this is I believe, a legitimate style of the stereo cover. However, this is also a counterfeit fake. So you got Love Me Do again and P.S. I Love You on the back. It says stereophonic on top. But look at that. It's a washed out photo of the Beatles. And actually, this is, was it this one? No, here it is. So this is another variation of that in shrink wrap. And I actually purchased this back in the 70s, probably at the local Two Guys store in Morris Plains, New Jersey. And it was in the bargain bin, and I knew full well it wasn't an authentic copy because there was like about 20 copies of it in the bin. So those are some of the things to look out for. As far as the cover is concerned, again, the photo is really washed out. It's a stereo version 1 label. But let's take a look at the actual records themselves. So here we are. I've got 3 legitimate copies of Introducing the Beatles here for you to take a look at. So this is one of the label variations. Now keep in mind, like I said, VJ was kind of, teetering on the bankruptcy front. So they had to use what they had to. So this is actually a label from a 45 RPM record that they used, for this album. But let's notice some earmarks. The rainbow ring around the black label is vivid. It's nice. The colors are all there. And it's really professional. On some of the counterfeits, I'll show you a counterfeit version of this in contrast. But it's really nice. Notice on all 3 of these legitimate labels, Introducing the Beatles and the name Beatles are together above the spindle hole. Okay, and then there's micro groove there under side 1 on the right, catalog number, and all that. Really, really nice. Now we go over to this variation, which is a block VJ variation. Does not say micro groove, but again, Introducing the Beatles and Beatles are together above the spindle hole. So this denotes really it's a legit copy. And now yet one other variation that I have in my collection is another rainbow label with a brackets logo up on the top, which is larger than the one that was on the 45 RPM label. And again, micro groove, beautiful rainbow colors, and introducing the Beatles, and the Beatles are above the spindle hole. You'll see that really on legit copies. Okay, now here's some counterfeit versions. So the first thing you're going to see here, most all of the counterfeit variations from the 1970s into the 80s that I've seen have this format of label. The brackets VJ logo up on the top, and then notice the title of the album, Introducing the Beatles, and then the Beatles, divided between the spindle hole is between them. So if you see this, immediately the red flag needs to go up, because no legitimate copies of this album format the title of the album and the name of the band separated by the spindle hole. So there you go. I mean, that's a telltale sign. Now remember those rainbow labels on the legit copies, how nice and vivid they were, and all the colors were even. Well, take a look at this. This is another counterfeit, and just look at that rainbow label. It's really, I mean, it's not cut right. The colors here on the bottom are almost not even there. And again, introducing the Beatles, and the Beatles are separated by that spindle hole. And then the third counterfeit I have right here, I mean, it's the same as the first. The brackets and plain black label. Now here's another couple of things. If you actually do get home, let's say you bought a counterfeit, on every counterfeit that I've gotten, on the song Chains, right at the end, it cuts off. It doesn't completely fade out, whereas on a legitimate copy, it doesn't, it just plays out and fades out just as you would expect. It's also, the legitimate albums are in true monophonic mixes from England, and the sound quality is amazing. Whereas with the counterfeits, I mean, they were copied from an album onto tape probably, and then that same tape was used over and over and over again. So the counterfeit copies, even if it says stereo on the cover, they're not stereo, and sound quality is not great. I was actually amazed when I got my first legitimate copy. So there's the labels in a nutshell. Now I've mentioned this already, but here's a couple of other telltale signs. So, the brown border, that's a counterfeit. On a lot of the counterfeits, you can't really see George's shadow. I mean, it's vivid on a legit copy, but in any event, compared to a legit copy, it's just, these pictures are just so washed out, and you don't realize it until you get a legit copy. Now let's turn this over. Oopsie. And I would say 99.9% of the counterfeits have this running order. The first version of Introducing the Beatles with Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You. Legally, they had to take, not that they really listened to legalities at the time, but VJ then removed those two songs, and legit version 2 copies have Please Please Me and Ask Me Why in their place. So if you see a stereo cover with these two songs, you're gonna probably know off the bat it's a fake. There you have it. I really do not want to see you get burned by paying good money for a counterfeit Introducing the Beatles because you are not aware that it's counterfeit. sometimes I'll even message an eBay seller and say, hey, you know what, you're charging $50 for this, do you know it's a counterfeit? I'll get ignored, or someone will say, how do you know? Well, you got to do your research, all right? So hopefully this video helps give you an idea of how to spot a counterfeit. And even if you get taken in and you get it home and you play it on the turntable, there's some earmarks, some things that you can look out for. So hopefully you've learned a little something, and please make informed decisions when you collect Beatles albums. So until next time, helping you with collecting the Beatles 101, it's me, David, here in my Beatles Corner. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Collecting Beatles 101, and if you are into bourbon reviews, please check out my other YouTube channel, at My Whiskey Den. Thanks for watching.